Okay, thank you for joining us again. It is episode 2 of 2023. I wish I could record more of these things, but life gets in the way. This time we are delving into representation and diversity in sales, which something close to my heart, and something I don't know that gets talked about as much as maybe it should. So my guest is someone who knows far more about this subject than I do and has made it his mission to, well, make all that better. So Omar from TrainYo, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and TrainYo as well, obviously, and then we'll dive into some questions that I've got for you.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. So TrainYo as a business, our mission is to enable people from all backgrounds to break into the tech sector, starting with sales. That's what we do, that's what we know. So on the back end, we train people free over weeks on everything they know, become a top SDR. We cover all the costs for their training. And on the front end, we've got a commercial hiring platform that companies can use to really access that talent and automate their sourcing process and also increase fair representation in their SDR organizations as well.
Amazing. And well, your background is a mixture of sales and recruitment. So we're sort of coming at this from a very similar angle. I've never been a recruiter, but I work for a recruitment company. So it'd be interesting to see where those perspectives take us, I suppose. But yeah, listen, question one is why is this important, I suppose? And I say this fully aware that I'm a white middle class university educated man who's worked in sales for 10 years. That's the stereotype. I tick most of the boxes, right? So recognizing that that is the sales stereotype, and we've all worked in those sales cultures where they're so dominated by people who tick those boxes, for want of a better way of describing them. What are we missing from not widening that representation and that diversity? And therefore, why do you think it is important? Not just, I suppose, for people on an individual basis, but for the sales leaders that might be listening to this to actually come on, let's see what we can do better here.
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons why it's happening. I think one of the big reason why it's happening is because it's all ingrained processes, and that's how things have always been done. Like from a sales issue, they've always pretty much you get a person that sets the business up, he'll or she will hire someone in their image, and they will hire in their image, and what they think is good is probably more like a carbon copy of themselves. Yep. What traits actually make a good salesperson, right? So that's just what's happened. I never really think people are intentionally racist, prejudiced. No one, like people don't want working class people to get into the space. It's just a case of the status quo, like this is how it is and this is how it's always been, until someone comes and shakes it up. No one questions it. It's like, for example, when everyone in the US was charging $5, $10, $20, $30,000 for an 8-week SDR program, no one batted an eyelid, right? No companies are saying that's wrong. No companies that work with these, no one. I'm not saying it is wrong, but no one was challenging that because that was the status quo, right? Until we came and said we're doing it for free whilst paying the trainers a better rate than these organizations are. And the reason for that is because we want people like us to get into the space, and then people talk about it. And I think it's the same with sales, right? Things have always been a certain way. It's always been acquiring in your own image. It's never really been like, not a scientific way. There's never really been a process just like, you're like me, I like you, and that's pretty much it in sales, really. There's never been scorecards, or no one's ever thought about the fact that we can get different people into the sales industry, and people have got what it takes. You don't need a degree, for example, to be good at sales, which was a very common misconception, even still is. Even when I was coming through, and even now it still is as well. So I think the status quo of how things are and what is good salesperson just kind of needs to be recognized a little bit more and change from this has done before and this is how it needs to be done right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's been that conversation in recruitment over the last few years about, we've talked about cultural fit for a long time, and that is almost like a very diplomatic way of saying exactly what you've said, which is hiring kind of mirror images of what you already have. That's what fits.
100%.
And it's. I think the university degree thing is really interesting because I can probably count on one hand the number of people in sales I know who got into sales deliberately.
Yeah,
it's something that people sort of fall into sometimes, and the university degree requirement on a job spec kind of opens that up for, okay, I've graduated, what next?
Mhm.
And people end up quite often
Yeah.
talking, in sales hiring processes because they've got that box ticked. And the irony there is they didn't necessarily proactively seek out that career.
Yeah.
What it, I suppose, removes is the chance for people who didn't go to university, but who might actually proactively think that's the career for them, and it blocks them out of that, process, which is madness, surely.
Yeah. It blocked me out, right? Like, even because I started in recruitment and then getting to sales, like, not having a degree, like, cost me a lot of applications. It was getting questioned a lot when I was going into interview processes. People didn't quite understand it. I didn't understand why a degree would make me a better salesperson. Like, I deliberately got into sales, right? So I didn't understand why I needed that degree. But yeah, it's like, I think it's one of the most ridiculous notions out there that
Yeah.
degree helps you in your sales role, and that somehow, when people say degree or equivalent experience, that somehow degree is the same as 4 years experience in sales, which is mind-boggling at the same time.
It's really not. If anything, and I'm only speaking for myself here, I think it made me worse.
Yeah.
I think there is so much to be said right now about being succinct, being understood, and particularly the more academic subjects at university teach you to sound smart. They don't teach you to be understood. And it took me years to unlearn that, to stop writing essays in emails because I wanted the person at the other end of that to think I was intelligent. Actually,
Yeah.
the smartest thing is to write and talk in a way that people understand what you mean and what you're saying. And I did sociology and politics at uni, right? So I did the proper academic thing and came
Yeah.
out of it, all these long words, all these, huge sentences and 12,000 word essays. That is I think, barrier to being good at sales, not a qualification for it.
Yeah, 100%.
Personally,
And we see that all the time on the program, right? One of the biggest things we have to do, because we do still get graduate support, is kind of to rewire the way people think, write, and speak, because they'll speak with such complexity sometimes, and in the sentences, and they're so long, and they go around the houses sometimes. It's one of the biggest things we have to do is kind of rewire the way they speak, write, and think, because like, yeah, no one's going to understand it. I'm not going to read 3 paragraphs that come in my inbox. It's just not going to happen. Right?
exactly. It's not happening. I get them still every day, and I've written worse, so I'm one to talk. So, when it comes to the TrainYo program, where you're trying to bring people who really are proactively seeking out this career choice. They want a career in tech, they want a career in sales. They don't meet that stereotype of what is in sales currently, and that I do think is changing, but maybe not as fast as we would like. Where are they coming to you from? Are they coming straight out of school? Are they coming from, where they've had 10, 15 years in another career and they're making a switch? What's drawing them to that kind of training program, do you think?
I think I've tried to do like analysis on trends of backgrounds of people and where they're from, etc., and what they've been doing, but it is just so random. Like, there are some people that come fresh out of school. For example, we develop more and more partnerships with that. Right, we get some people who come out of sixth form. So I don't know who's listening, right? That's when they turn 18, right before they start university. Ironically, some of those people have been some of the best SDRs we've had, right? And people question whether they got the life experience, but they've been absolutely class, right? We have Brandon, we have Josiah, we have James Patton, who've been at that kind of like that age, which have been amazing. And then we get like people working in like retail, like in like supermarkets, and then we have the hospital. We get quite a few hospitality people from restaurants and stuff. Again, you didn't even know about this, but then we get like older people in finance and education sometimes who are career transitioning. So we get like I've tried to do analysis on the trends, but it is just so sporadic, insane. But we do get, from what we've seen, it is over like a 70% of people are from like underrepresented backgrounds, and a big thing is that class, right? No one cares about that because you can't show it, you can't talk about it. It's never part of anyone's metrics, right? I said I don't think gender and ethnicity. I think gender and ethnicity are issues, but it's not issues around awareness. Everyone wants those things, but no one says, get me someone who's been through, who's come from a poor background, or no one gets me someone who doesn't know about the industry, for example. No one asked me that, but everyone knows to get females and people of color, right? And I don't think those are issues as we talk about. I think it's more on the class side, right? Like maybe I've gone off topic here, but a poor white working class kid will still struggle more than a rich Asian woman to get into textiles, hands down. I can guarantee you that. How they feel in the workplace is a different story, but to get in through the door, that person will struggle way more than the other person, as I just mentioned. So yeah, it's just a total variety of people.
That's really interesting, the barrier that's there to getting in the door. And I suppose that's where we talk about, diversity a lot in recruitment, and it's really easy for companies to measure things you can physically see. Yeah. Things you almost don't have to ask the person about themselves, and it's that invisible stuff that isn't necessarily more important, but actually the nuances of it make it harder to understand why that person might find it difficult to break into that career, or why that person found it easier. And it is hard to measure. And I don't know that there's a way around that, I suppose. How can a company, unless they start asking their candidates, do you consider yourself working class, middle class? And those are very UK-centric terms as well, it has to be said.
I think the biggest thing is just driving awareness of it. Just driving awareness of it across the different demographics. Like, I think most companies try and buy diverse tools, or I don't know how companies do it right now, but I don't feel the word is really being spread out there. I think people I only found out about tech pure luck when I was 26, 27, remember? And I have a business space, and still people in my network still don't really know exactly what it is. So I just think it is a case of one, pushing the message out there. I do think it's a case of changing the interview processes and changing the way talent screen as well, like the sourcing process. I do feel the whole recruitment model is broken because all the agencies advertise they want to get the top grads, and that obviously now they can't say that anymore because I think we came along, fuck shit up. But basically, right, because that was always there before, but now I see it going down. And I do feel that because of us, even though we won't get the credit for it. So one, I think it's a combination of awareness, but then changing internal processes. And I think there are kind of biases. I think if someone is maybe a little bit raw, they don't speak, maybe I've got a bit of a twang, right? And I think it's just getting over those sorts of things and identifying that those aren't negative things, and you should look more at the character and the application and the aptitude of the person, as opposed to these little things that sometimes, like a degree, like an accent, like whatever it is, doesn't necessarily go, because you think they're going to clash with the team because they're not like everybody else, for example. These are maybe key things that people in organizations probably need to look at.
That's interesting, and I'm fascinated by accents, right? And I think it's because maybe no one understands where the hell I'm from when I talk to them, because my accent's weird. But it is, and I think again, particularly in the UK, it is seen as a class signifier. You think if someone has a particularly strong regional accent, that they are slightly lower down the chain of that stereotypical class structure. That may or may not be the case, but I think it's often seen that way. And we're getting on a tangent here, but I personally do notice that in that living in Scotland with a very odd accent, but that sounds quite English. I'm bred as being upper middle class more so than anything else, when actually my background is very, very different to that. I fit into that category now, but my upbringing does not. And it's the accent that makes people think about that. And do you feel your candidates are almost held back because of the perceptions people have when they speak to them, almost regardless of what they're actually saying?
Sometimes, a lot of times, maybe some of it too road and they got it brushed up a little bit, but I do feel it's right. And I mean, there are studies out there that show the difference in perception when it does keep tracks and bias as well. But it obviously comes later. Like if you've got, again, it's all about hiring your own image, and people don't realize they do this. They say they want someone that's got it, someone that is an A player. What they probably mean is someone that is just like them in all aspects. And then you hire one person, you hire two people, you have a team of that. When someone different kind of comes along, you're going to think they're going to shake shit up, or maybe they're a bit brash or something like that. So I do feel that he's not with all managers, I think, and I think that's a snowball effect, right? Once more of those people get into leadership roles, then it's like a snowball effect, and it kind of caves in, right? And it kind of changes. And again, I don't think that's necessarily a prejudice thing. I just think it's an internal thing. And it's just, again, just how it is. It's not because one kids like you know what I mean? It's just how it's been, and they don't realize.
Yeah, I almost think you could say that for most aspects of what we call DE&I. Like it's not always, and very rarely is it deliberate. It's a lack of knowledge, it's a lack of awareness, and what's important, I suppose, is people's reaction when they realise that things need to be different. Rather than getting defensive, it's the actually, oh, okay, I need to learn more about that. But I suppose that brings me on to the what happens. So, like going back to the TrainYo programs, you have your people who pass with flying colours. They are then hired by one of your clients. Now, obviously, companies working with you, I assume, are fully aware of the mission that you have. So maybe they are more open and in attempting to build more inclusive cultures internally. But is the recruitment part is one part of the process. It's then when somebody from an underrepresented background, for example, joins a tech sales team.
Yeah.
I'm going to hazard a guess that quite often they are the only of whatever criteria you might kind of want to work, maybe the only non-university educated person or the only person of colour, for example, in a pre-existing team. How do we make sure, I suppose, that they then feel included, that the hiring manager understands you've hired someone different here, they're going to be brilliant, but you need to make sure they don't feel alienated?
Yeah, I think that's the difficulty, because what we do is we have like quarterly catch-ups with the P students, so they know what they're there, and maybe last year we weren't as close to the customers should be, and this year we're going to try and be a little bit closer. But it's really difficult because on one hand, the companies are working with us. Yeah, they know they're getting people that are diverse, but there's also an inherent business advantage in the sense that you're getting someone that has been trained by some of the top people in the industry. They'll hit the ground running. They know they want to be in sales. So sometimes I don't know whether they're working with us. I think most companies work with us. I don't know, maybe I don't know if it's the diversity angle, but I think it's the business advantage that they get. And it's difficult for me to be able to predict who's going to fit into what team at times. I mean, students do look at it, right? They do look at the team and say, actually, like, there's no one like me in that team, or they're all one way, the whole leadership is one way sometimes, and that can put people off sometimes, but it's really difficult to be able to tell who's going to actually like fit in to that team. We do have like quarterly catch-ups with the students, and then like, because the relationship we build with them, it's not like a one-on-one it's not like a transactional relationship. They've been with us for 8 weeks and they've supported us, so any issues they have, they'll kind of come to us and say, oh, Omar, this situation, blah, 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 blah. But in all fairness, credit to the people we work with, we haven't had bad examples of where people haven't fit in or they've been treated differently. Because that's one thing I can say. We haven't had, no one's come back to, they might have, not everyone's going to work out right, and maybe there's been someone hasn't worked out, but no one's ever come back and said, you know, Omar, like they treat me differently because of whatever reason, or I don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. That hasn't been the case so far. And to be like, even when I was working in tech, I don't think I was always maybe the non-degree educated person in my business, always maybe sound a bit different, but I never felt like in the team, I didn't feel as if people treat me differently.
That's interesting. I mean, it's great, but it's interesting. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about maybe it's the recruitment process that's really broken. Because actually, once people get into the business, get into the job, actually, there will be bad examples of companies that don't do, inclusion and culture properly. But for the most part, people do great and feel kind of welcome. So it's the recruitment process almost that is the most broken.
And I think it's the sourcing process. When it comes to diversity, it's this sourcing process, right? And it's actually, everyone focuses on, everyone wants to talk about how inclusive they are, but what's the point of being inclusive if you don't have people from different backgrounds coming into your talent pipeline? I think that's where the big issue is. No one seems to want to really address. And it's about driving awareness, before they come to your talent pipeline, but then it's also looking at your sourcing process once they kind of get to the application process, seeing if it's actually fair.
Yeah,
as well.
that's interesting, because I suppose inclusion has to come first, because obviously if you want to build a more diverse team and they're coming into an alienating culture, it's never going to work. But sourcing is tricky, especially I suppose if you're talking about things that are difficult to categorize, things that are difficult to measure. So what would your, I suppose, advice be to, let's say there's a talent acquisition manager for a tech business listening right now that's keen to source a wider base of candidates. How do they do that? Is it about language? Is it about where they look? Is it about what kind of job ads go out there? Is it a mixture of everything?
Yeah, everyone says that language makes a big, I'm not 100% sure that it really does. I think there's a few things. I think as an organization, you have to, one, as an org, you got to make sure like you are presented as someone that actually cares about it, about from background, because people do look at these things. And what's happened now, people are kind of desensitized to the corporate stuff, like we have commitment to inclusion and this, that. People are just immune to that, right? It doesn't mean anything. It's just like, this is BS and everyone knows it, but no one really says anything about it. So what I think companies have to do is first look at themselves internally, right? I think the message has to come from the top. I think the leadership team have got to be externally vocal about the fact that they want to get people in from different backgrounds, not just because it improves business performance, but because of a different reason, right? Like I think we hear that and I think, oh, well, I don't think it should be linked to a business performance, but ultimately, because diversity isn't a revenue driver, it does fall back.
It's a tough one, that, isn't it? Because the studies do show that it does increase business performance, and sometimes that's the way you have to convince people who aren't otherwise convinced. But because that's what will drive action sometimes. So
and that was a frustrating thing. I was thinking, well, you can't, and you see again, it's not just to get someone going for the sake of it, right? It's just to make sure that everyone does have an equal opportunity. I think look internally, make sure it's coming from the top externally so people can see it on the outside, but make sure it's coming down internally so people internally know about it as well. To start to change, like to make people aware that there are maybe certain issues, they've got to start changing it, right? I also think in terms of the job spec, right? So if I'm talking about sales specifically, like take some things that just don't need to be there, right? Like take your stuff like your degree up, because that will just alienate a whole portion of the whole population, right? And there is no correlation between success in sales and a degree. If there is any correlation, there's studies that show that, and by all means, I'm open to having it, checking it out, right? But as far as I'm aware, there is no correlation between that, not from what I've seen in the industry. Because when that's a filter, you're missing out on mad gems at the same time as well. I also feel that the filter shouldn't be the CV. The filter for sales roles should be work samples, right? That's when you see who's got the effort. That's when you see how people present themselves. That's when you see how people can take an instruction. That should be the filter, not because the problem is TA teams can't. We can speak to everyone, so that's how we don't miss out on any gems, because that's my team's prerogative. TA teams cannot speak to everyone that applies, right? It's just how you're going to do it. It's not possible. So instead of trying to use the CV as a filter, why not make them do certain time? I know there's certain disadvantages, but I think there's always a way to get around those. But I feel that's a better filtering criteria. An actual. So if you're looking at entry level, I'm not saying for experienced roles, because if you're not going to do that shit.
I think there's huge merit in that, but like you say, there's complications, because I've heard people talk in the past about having video CVs. And you just think for sales roles, how amazing would that be to get someone's personality coming across, understand how they communicate, because that's the most important part from sales, almost regardless of anything else in your CV. Can you communicate? But then obviously you get the whole idea of, well, okay, we know that people with non-white European sounding names on their CVs get less callbacks than people who do. So does the video CV almost exacerbate that problem? Do physical tasks make it harder for someone who is neurodiverse, maybe someone with dyslexia, for example, who would absolutely nail a discovery call, but struggles with, long form writing, for example? So it's a really complex issue, but there must be ways, like you say, to get around those things and make that sourcing process more representative.
Yeah, I think the work sample piece on the video, writing an email, just things to show one, they build a person, but also two, that they're making the effort, right? Because if someone does it, you also know actually the person going over it, right? I also think they should look at slightly different things. I also think for an SDR, we should really look at how someone's dealt with like adversity, how someone's worked stuff out in life as well. I think those are big traits that SDRs look at. And then I think it's about just pushing your brand out past LinkedIn and across the channels and trying to work with other partners who are present in other spaces, right? And build community. If you don't want to work with TrainYo, you don't want to work with anyone else, then like maybe build community, build partnerships with other kind of communities out there. That kind of can tap into that space. I'm just talking about the I'm not talking about for every other role out there. I'm just talking about the role. So there's a few things that I think companies can do. I've got like a mini. I basically got. I haven't got it now. I've got like a guide of what we did, of how we got people from different backgrounds and how we were able to not only get them in, but then make sure they perform kind of at the same time. So I've got like a whole one together right now, where it's a lot more succinct than what I've just said. There's a whole process around what we did by accident and on purpose. That's work, right? Because we've got a process now where we get applicants from different backgrounds. We can see we can see what level they're at, and we can basically predict how they're going to go on to succeed as well.
Yeah,
so
amazing. I think, I know you say, you have to get your brand out past LinkedIn. Absolutely, you need to go to where the communities you want to hire from are. But to go back to LinkedIn, I think what's been interesting to me over the last year or so that I've been following TrainYo and yourself, Omar, is that some of the people that have gone through your program are now the people whose content on LinkedIn I enjoy reading the most. And you can just tell the amount of kind of effort and passion that's gone into the program that they've then been through, and the results they're seeing from it. And it just goes to show, doesn't it, that if people putting the effort in to forge that career path, they're almost always going to perform better than the person who fell into it after finishing university and didn't know what else to do with themselves, which was me. Yeah, I don't know if there's any studies that say that, but it almost seems like it's obvious in a way.
Yeah, I think it's difficult when people perform. I mean, obviously, I'd like to think they are, because they've made an active choice to that. They've done 50-hour days because a lot of them were working to actually break into the space and then just do well, and that hunger, and then there's that drive, and there's that kind of like that point to prove as well. We always like, everyone's got a point to prove as a dangerous person, right? If they can kind of harness that. So I don't know whether or not it's difficult for me to say whether like they're better than the others. I think there's a bias for me to believe it. I'm aware of that, right? So I don't think I'm the best person to say that, but I do feel it shows mad amounts of drive to take a risk on a program, especially at the start, right? No, we need our brand at the start, but for people to work full time, to come in the evening, do the extra work that's required, 3 hours a day, Monday to Thursday, is definitely not easy. And then they've got to go through the interview process, and there's all these feelings of like imposter syndrome that they get, and they didn't know about the industry. A lot of them say, "Oh, I got a degree, will this company look at me?" Or do I really have a legitimate chance? So I'm feeling down, etc. I don't know if I can get in. Like, there's all these things that they kind of go through over the course of an 8-week period, let alone learning. So
it's a lot. It's a lot. But that the resilience that must build is a huge part of what you need, especially to be an SDR as well. So
that's the thing. Like, I think when I first said it, I thought everyone's going to get through the program, right? But naively, but no one. It was never going to be as everyone's making it. About 70%. 67% of people actually make it through the end of the program, which and from a business perspective is actually a good thing, right? Because it's just not everyone getting to the end.
And you kind of want that. It's almost as if everyone gets to the end, removing any personal reasons why they might drop out, then maybe it's too easy. You want it to kind of qualify, who's really going to be good at this, I suppose. But so to finish off then, because we've talked a lot about, the university degree has been a big thing, and I think it's a hot topic, I think, in hiring generally, not just in sales at the minute. And I think there's this drive, particularly, I'm assuming we're roughly the same age, there's a drive in our generation almost that just came up through school going, what are you going to do to get into uni? And I think it's the same in the US, it's the same in most places in Europe as well. That's starting to change. So be intrigued to almost have that conversation again in 5, 10 years and see where we're at with that. What's next for you and TrainYo? What would you do from here? You mentioned you're starting in sales. Is there an aspiration to start breaking down barriers elsewhere in tech, or to maybe move into more senior positions in tech sales? What happens next for you?
Yeah, so we've got the hiring platform for SDRs specifically. Now we want to really branch out into other regions as well, and really identify as like the SDR hiring platform of choice for organizations. And then the plan is to move up into other roles, right? In terms of SDR management, AE, heads of sales, and create the first purely commercial hiring platform, right? The goal on the front end is to become a staple in every company's hiring tech stack. And then on the back end, it will be to, in the long term, like build a world where it doesn't matter what your education, your background, wherever you're from, everyone should have the same access to practical education and opportunities. Long term is to disrupt education as we know it, make it accessible for everyone globally with practical education, not just theoretical education, which ultimately gets them into work, which is just not how it is at the moment. And I don't think education is, I think the system is slightly broken. I don't think it's fair for everyone, and I don't think it leads to outcomes ultimately, which is a reason why most people go there.
Yeah, I think that is a huge point there. And obviously we can speak about the education system here, but I've had previous guests talk about it in Europe and the US as well, where the education system is designed for people who think in a particular way. And I can say I'm one of those. The education system made me feel like I was always going to be a success because my brain worked that way. And as soon as you get out into the real world and realize the world doesn't work the way your brain works, that's a confusing place to be when you've gone through as that straight A student. Whereas the people on the flip side, for whom the system isn't designed for them, which is mad because it tells them then that they are, wrong or not smart enough, or which is baseless. It just means the system's not designed for them. Are the people we're almost talking about here, and it almost is backwards in many ways. So I don't know, maybe we should get into government and start changing things up a bit there. And, there's a reason I didn't get into politics after my degree.
I don't think the public sector is going to change it. I think it's what we're going to do, and that's the big thing that we want to do. It still looks a lot of money. We want people first, and then use that to do the thing back. That's the end goal, and I think we can do it. We've just got to execute. Yeah,
I think the younger generations kind of coming up behind us are thinking similarly. And that's only going to help the cause, I suppose. Listen, let's leave it there. I think we could talk about this for ages. There's so many other ways angles and directions we could go with it. But I really appreciate your time, Omar, and it's a fascinating subject. If anyone wants to kind of check things out further, then TrainYo are all over LinkedIn, so I'm sure that's where they'll find you. But I'm sure you're open to a few questions as well. So go and find them.
I appreciate being on.
Thanks very much.